The salvage ship moved slowly through the silent debris field, its metal body reflecting the faint red light of a distant, dying star. Elias sat alone in the pilot chair, one hand resting lightly on the controls while the other held a warm cup of recycled coffee. He preferred quiet jobs like this, far from crowded space lanes and far from the powerful empires that filled the galaxy with rules and expectations. Out here, he answered to no one. Humanity was still new among the stars. Other species often saw humans as unpredictable, emotional, or simply unimportant. Elias had heard all the opinions before, and he did not care. Being underestimated helped him survive. Salvage work required patience, creativity, and a willingness to take risks others avoided. He searched through abandoned battlefields and forgotten ruins, recovering technology and selling it to whoever paid fairly. His sensors suddenly made a soft warning sound. Elias frowned and leaned forward, scanning the display. A faint life signal appeared on the edge of the screen, weak and unstable. He blinked in confusion. Life signals in this region were impossible. The moon below was frozen and abandoned long ago after a mining accident turned its surface into a wasteland of ice storms and radiation pockets. He adjusted the sensors again, thinking it might be interference. But the signal remained. "Either my scanner is broken," he muttered quietly, "or someone is very unlucky." Curiosity pushed him to change course. The ship descended toward the moon, its engines humming gently as clouds of frozen dust swirled beneath it. The landscape below looked lifeless, covered in sharp ridges and deep shadows. Even the light from the red star felt weak and distant. Elias landed near the coordinates. The ship's door opened with a hiss, releasing warm air into the cold environment. He stepped out, wearing a protective suit, boots crunching against frozen ground. The wind was harsh, carrying tiny ice particles that struck his visor like sand. The signal led him toward a broken ridge where ice had collapsed inward. He activated a handheld scanner and followed its blinking light. Each step felt heavier as the signal grew stronger. Finally, he stopped. Half buried in the ice lay a figure. For a moment, he thought it was a statue. The armor covering the body looked elegant and complex, glowing faintly with energy lines that formed intricate patterns. But then the scanner confirmed it. A living being, barely alive. Elias knelt carefully and brushed away layers of frost. The face revealed beneath the damaged helmet was unfamiliar yet striking. Smooth skin with a pale shimmer, delicate features, and faint markings along her temples that suggested advanced biology. She was not human. Helping her would bring trouble. High-ranking aliens often came with complicated politics, and he had survived this long by avoiding both. But leaving someone to die was not an option he could accept. "All right," he said quietly, almost apologetically. "Looks like you're coming with me." He carefully lifted her, surprised by how light she felt despite the heavy armor. The suit's energy systems flickered weakly, trying to maintain life support. Back inside the ship, he laid her on a medical platform and began scanning her injuries. Several readings were unfamiliar, but basic biology remained universal enough for emergency care. The ship's computer struggled to analyze her species. Finally, a classification appeared. A member of the Verelian Empire, one of the most powerful civilizations in the region. Elias let out a slow breath. "That explains the fancy outfit," he said. He stabilized her breathing and adjusted the temperature controls. Hours passed as he monitored her condition. Slowly, her vital signs strengthened. Eventually, her eyes opened. They were bright silver, sharp and alert despite her weakness. She looked around quickly, confusion turning into suspicion when she noticed him. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. "My ship," Elias replied calmly. "You were freezing to death on a moon that no one visits." Her gaze hardened. "You are human? That obvious?" She tried to sit up but winced from pain. Elias gently pressed her shoulder back down. "Easy. Your body's been through enough." She watched him closely, as if expecting betrayal. Why would a human save me? He shrugged. Because you needed saving. Silence filled the room. She seemed unsure how to respond to such a simple answer. My name is Lyra, she said, finally. I was once part of the royal house. Elias raised an eyebrow but did not react dramatically. Titles meant little to him. I'm Elias, salvage pilot. No royal connections. Perhaps surprised by his lack of ceremony. She explained slowly that she had been exiled by her own people. The Royal Council had declared her dangerous after she challenged traditions. She believed that younger species, including humans, deserved equal voice in galactic decisions. Her ideas were considered reckless, threatening the stability of the Empire. Instead of public punishment, they abandoned her in isolation, a silent removal. Elias listened quietly, unsure what to say. The idea of leaving someone alone to die felt cold, even for powerful civilizations. As she rested, he began preparing the ship to leave orbit. But before he could lift off, warning lights flashed across the control panel. A faint signal appeared, not random, but targeted. Someone was scanning for them. Elias frowned. Looks like you're not as forgotten as you thought. Lyra's expression darkened with realization. They have come, she whispered. He powered up the engines without hesitation. The ship rose from the frozen surface just as distant energy signatures appeared on sensors. Unknown vessels were entering the system, their movements precise and controlled. As the salvage ship accelerated into open space, Elias felt the weight of the situation settle around him. Saving a stranger had just changed everything. Behind them, the silent moon faded into darkness, while unseen hunters followed their trail. Liara watched the stars through the viewport, her expression filled with both fear and determination. For the first time since her exile, she was no longer alone, and that simple fact might reshape the future in ways neither of them yet understood. The journey had begun, and the galaxy was already closing in around them. The small salvage ship moved quietly through deep space, far from the frozen moon where Elias had found Liara. Outside the viewport, endless stars stretched across the darkness, but inside the ship, the atmosphere felt heavy with unspoken tension. Elias focused on the controls, guiding the ship through a series of unpredictable flight paths to make tracking more difficult. Liara sat in the co-pilot seat, watching the navigation screen with growing concern. Her strength was slowly returning, but the weight of her past and the danger following them made her uneasy. They will not stop searching, she said quietly. The Royal Patrols are patient. They do not abandon a mission. Elias nodded without looking at her. Good thing I'm not easy to catch. She studied him carefully. Humans had always been described to her as emotional and reckless, yet he moved with calm confidence, making decisions quickly, but not carelessly. He trusted instinct and experience rather than strict protocol, which both confused and impressed her. The ship's sensors suddenly flashed again. A faint signal appeared behind them. Elias leaned forward. Contact. Long range. Multiple ships. Lyra felt her chest tighten. Royal hunters. He immediately changed direction, sending the ship into a dense asteroid field. Large rocks drifted slowly through space, forming a natural maze. Most pilots avoided such areas because navigation was difficult, but Elias guided the ship smoothly between spinning debris. Humans rely on unpredictability, he said lightly. Harder to calculate. Lyra watched as he adjusted power levels and hid their energy signature among the asteroids. The pursuing ships hesitated at the edge of the field, their advanced sensors struggling to maintain a lock. For the first time since her exile, she felt a small spark of hope. After several tense hours, the signals faded. Elias allowed himself a small smile. Looks like we bought some time. Liara exhaled slowly. You risked your life without hesitation. Why? He shrugged again. Because running scared doesn't work. You adapt. She considered his words carefully. Adaptation was not a core principle of her people, The Varelian Empire valued perfection and tradition, believing their system was already flawless. Seeing a human approach challenges with flexibility made her question everything she had been taught. As they traveled deeper into frontier space, Liara explored the ship, observing human technology closely. Much of it looked patched together from different sources. Alien parts combined with human engineering in creative ways. It lacked elegance, but worked surprisingly well.
"You modify everything," she said.
"Improvisation," Elias corrected, "makes life interesting." During repairs to her armor, he discovered hidden encryption codes embedded in its systems. Curious, he attempted to decode them. At first, he expected personal files or security logs, but what appeared shocked him. Large sections of classified data filled the screen. Liara watched as his expression changed. "What is it?" she asked. He hesitated. "You might want to sit down." Together, they reviewed fragments of the files. The information revealed covert operations carried out by high-ranking members of the Royal Council. Secret monitoring of developing civilizations, manipulation of trade routes, and interference designed to keep emerging species from gaining influence. Lyra stared at the screen, disbelief filling her eyes. "This cannot be true." Elias glanced at her. "Looks pretty real." Her hands trembled slightly. She had defended her people her entire life, believing their rule maintained peace and stability. Seeing evidence of hidden control shattered her certainty.
"Why would they hide this inside my armor?" she whispered.
"Maybe you were meant to carry it," Elias said thoughtfully. "Or maybe someone wanted you to discover it." The realization struck her slowly. Her exile had not been random. Someone within the Empire had used her as a tool. Before they could discuss further, a distress signal appeared on the navigation display, a small transport ship drifting without power. Elias frowned. Could be a trap. Lyra expected him to ignore it. Survival demanded caution. Instead, he turned the ship toward the signal. "You are going to help them?" she asked in surprise. "Someone might need it," he replied simply. They found a group of travelers stranded after a mechanical failure. Elias guided them through emergency repairs, sharing supplies despite the risk of revealing their location. Liara watched him carefully during the rescue. He did not ask for payment or recognition. He simply helped because he believed it was the right thing to do. Afterward, she sat quietly, deep in thought. "My people believe strength comes from control," she said finally. "But humans, you find strength in helping strangers. Doesn't always work out, but it's worth trying." The moment changed something inside her. For the first time, she saw humanity not as a lesser civilization, but as a different kind of power. Days later, another encounter nearly ended their escape. Royal ships appeared suddenly from hyperspace, cutting off several escape routes. Elias reacted instantly, sending the ship into a dangerous maneuver that pushed the engines beyond safe limits. Warning alarms filled the cockpit. Liara felt fear rising, but Elias remained focused. "Hold on," he said. He redirected energy to shields using debris and gravity fields to confuse enemy targeting systems. The royal pilots moved with precise formation, but they struggled to predict his movements. "They expect you to follow logic," Liara said, realizing the pattern. "Good thing I don't," he replied with a grin. After a tense chase, they escaped again. But the ship suffered damage. Repairs would take time. While working together in the engine room, Lyra felt a growing sense of trust. She shared more about her past, how she had questioned the Empire's treatment of other species, how isolation had followed her, even before exile.
Elias listened without judgment.
"You stood up for something you believed in," he said. "That matters." She looked at him, surprised by the simplicity of his perspective. Among her own people, every decision was weighed by political consequences. With him, choices felt more human, more honest. As they prepared to continue their journey, Liara reviewed the hidden data again. the truth became clearer. Someone within the royal council had feared her influence and used exile as a cover for elimination. The hunters were not just retrieving her. They were ensuring she would never speak.
"They are not trying to bring me home," she said quietly.
They are trying to erase me. Elias met her gaze. Then we stopped running. The idea shocked her. Confronting the Empire seemed impossible. But for the first time, she did not feel alone. Outside, the stars shifted as the ship entered. Another jump. Ahead lay unknown dangers and choices that would reshape both their lives. Liara closed her eyes briefly, gathering strength. The frightened exile she had been on the frozen moon was fading. In her place stood someone ready to challenge the truth, and beside her stood a human who refused to surrender, no matter how powerful the enemy. The hunt had begun, but so had their transformation. The ship glided silently through the outer rim of the star system, a fragile thread weaving through the darkness where no one traveled. Elias worked at the controls, his hands steady, eyes scanning multiple displays at once. Lyra sat beside him, her gaze moving between the stars and the ship's instruments. She was learning fast. Every day away from her empire taught her new ways to see the galaxy, and every choice Elias made showed her a kind of strength she had never truly understood. For weeks they had avoided patrols, pirates and rogue raiders, slipping through gaps in the maps where no human or alien dared to enter. But running had its limits. Supplies were low, the ship was damaged from previous escapes, and even Elias's ingenuity could only stretch finite resources so far. Liara understood now what survival meant in a universe that did not care about titles, nobility, or rank. Out here, only action, courage, and quick thinking counted. She studied Elias as he worked. He never seemed afraid, never panicked, and never hesitated even when danger appeared. He did not carry a sword or heavy weaponry, yet he could outthink and outmaneuver forces far stronger than him. There was a human stubbornness she had only heard stories about. Not reckless, but a stubborn refusal to surrender. It was foreign to her people, who valued control and obedience above all. Watching him, she realized humans had a different kind of power, one that relied on creativity, empathy, and trust. Their next destination was a cluster of independent colonies on a planet called Arandis. The system was not charted in royal records, which made it a safe temporary refuge. The colonies were rough, built by people who refused to follow empires, species who survived by mutual respect rather than fear. Liara felt her chest tighten as she imagined a society so different from the rigid hierarchy of her world. Here, humans were not minor or weak. They were respected, trusted, and even admired by other species. The irony struck her. Humans were supposed to be insignificant, yet here they held influence that even her people lacked. Before they reached the planet, Elias instructed her to prepare for landing. The ship had only minimal shields, and Arandis had its own orbital debris to navigate. As they descended, the planet revealed a chaotic beauty. Cities sprawled in unexpected directions. Towers built into cliffs, sprawling markets that glittered under twin suns, and ships moving unpredictably in the air. The human colonies were busy, alive and vibrant, a stark contrast to the controlled precision of her empire. Liara's eyes widened.
"They are free," she said quietly. "They are alive."
Really?
"Alive, because they try new things," Elias said.
Not everything works, but every failure teaches them something. Humans and others like them grow stronger because they adapt. They landed near a busy trading hub. Elias guided the ship through narrow streets and into a safe docking bay. Residents glanced curiously at them, noting the alien passenger but making no assumptions. This was a place where outsiders were expected and sometimes welcomed. Liara noticed that humans and aliens worked together without hierarchy, solving problems through negotiation and effort rather than command. As they disembarked, Elias handed her a small pack. "You'll need supplies," he said. "And maybe a disguise. Some people still think you're dangerous," She noticed how simple Elias's life was, yet how effective. Tools were repurposed, old machines fixed with ingenuity, and problems solved by quick thinking. This was a stark difference from the Varelian Empire, where even small mistakes could ruin someone's life. Out here, errors were opportunities. Progress relied on flexibility and resilience, not perfection. In the marketplace, Lyra struggled to blend in. Her pale skin and silver eyes stood out, and people whispered as she passed. Elias walked beside her, calmly moving through crowds, as if nothing unusual were happening. The contrast was striking. While she felt exposed and uncertain, he carried confidence, born from experience. She began to understand something vital. Survival depended on more than armor or rank. It relied on courage and adaptability. The weeks passed in a mix of preparation and learning. Elias taught her to repair small machinery, improvise tools, and navigate the dangers of frontier systems. Lyra absorbed every lesson, eager to shed the helplessness she had felt during her exile. She realized her people had underestimated humanity because they relied on rules, control, and fear, and humans thrived because they ignored boundaries when necessary. One day, as they repaired a navigation array together, Liara noticed a pattern in the royal tracker's signals. "They are always a few jumps behind," she said. "They anticipate our moves, but never predict the unexpected." Elias smiled. "Exactly. Humans are unpredictable. That's our edge." Her mind raced. If they could use unpredictability strategically, they could confront the Royal Council on their own terms. Running would only last so long. Eventually, they would be forced to face the Empire. But perhaps, she thought, they did not need to fight like soldiers. Perhaps victory could come from cleverness, from courage, from showing the truth rather than hiding. Their next challenge came suddenly. While traveling through a remote asteroid belt, Elias detected multiple small ships converging on their position. Royal agents were closing in, more determined than before. This time, there was no asteroid field to hide behind. Liara felt fear climb in her chest, but Elias's calm demeanor steadied her. "They expect you to panic," he said.
"We won't give them that!"
They maneuvered the ship through the debris as the pursuing ships opened fire. Laser blasts streaked past, hitting rocks and sending fragments spinning. Elias guided their ship with precision, using every twist and turn to confuse the enemy. Liara assisted with navigation, learning to anticipate the ship's movements and adjust rapidly. For the first time, she felt like a partner rather than a passenger. During the chase, they encountered a group of stranded miners, caught between two aggressive factions. Without hesitation, Elias altered course to help them. Liara protested at first, worried it would slow them down.
Elias ignored her concerns. "Humans don't leave people behind," he said simply.
"You'll see the benefits soon. They rescued the miners, providing supplies and guidance to reach safety. This action, small in the scale of the galaxy, had consequences."
The miners were connected to a network of colonies who were quietly monitoring royal movements. By helping them, Elias and Liara gained allies without firing a single shot. Liara began to see the truth of his words. Humanity's strength was not in technology, military, or status. It was in intelligence, creativity, and compassion. Humans could inspire loyalty and action in ways her empire could not understand. The realization strengthened her resolve. After escaping the asteroid belt, the two continued toward Arandes. Liara studied the hidden data in her armor again, discovering more shocking secrets. Her exile had been orchestrated not just to punish her, but to prevent her from revealing the Empire's abuses. Every mission, every chase, was part of a larger game designed to keep emerging species under control. Her rebellion had been seen as a threat to the Council's dominance, and now she had evidence. "I was never exiled for defiance alone," she said quietly. "I was exiled to silence me."
"Then we make sure they can't succeed." Liara felt a surge of determination. No longer was she a frightened, powerless princess.
She had survived the ice of a remote moon, escaped hunters, and learned the strength of humans firsthand. Now she understood her mission: expose the truth, protect those weaker than her, and challenge a system built on fear and control. Together, they began planning. Elias suggested contacting networks and human colonies, alliances with other marginalized species, and using knowledge rather than combat to confront the Empire. Liara realized that running had taught her more than hiding ever could. She had grown stronger, smarter, and more courageous. She was no longer merely a princess in exile. She was a leader in training. At night, she watched the stars from the ship's observation deck. Elias joined her silently, both lost in thought. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, filled with unknown dangers and possibilities. She realized that despite her past fears, the future was not predetermined. Humans had taught her that survival and strength came from action, ingenuity, and belief in what was right.
"Do you ever doubt yourself?"
she asked. "Sometimes," Elias replied. "But doubt doesn't get you anywhere. You act, you learn, and you keep going." "That's enough," Liara smiled faintly. For the first time, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Not in the rigid walls of her empire, but alongside a human who saw strength differently, who trusted her, and who inspired her to trust herself. The ship continued its journey toward Arendis, carrying two unlikely companions who were no longer simply fleeing. They were learning, growing, and preparing. The Empire had underestimated humans, as it always did, but underestimating them was now the Empire's greatest mistake. Liara understood that the upcoming confrontation would not only challenge the Council, but redefine the value of humanity across the stars, and for the first time, she was ready to face it. The royal capital loomed ahead, like a fortress of light and shadows. Twin suns reflected off tall spires, casting long, sharp shapes across the city's surface. Ships moved in precise patterns above the capital, signaling the presence of the Council's elite guard. This was the heart of the Empire, the place that had declared Liara exiled, a place she had once called home but now feared. Yet, for the first time, she did not feel powerless. She was no longer the frightened girl abandoned on a frozen moon. She had survived countless dangers, learned the strength of humans, and discovered that courage and intelligence could outweigh even the most rigid traditions. Elias piloted their small ship through narrow gaps in the orbital defenses, weaving between patrols with practiced precision. Lyra watched from the co-pilot's seat, her heart pounding. The royal hunters had found them again, but this time they were not fleeing blindly. They were choosing their moment and their approach.
"Stay calm," Elias said. "We're not here to fight."
"Not yet." Liara nodded. Fighting had never been her goal. She needed something more powerful. The truth. She had the evidence in her armor, and now she had a human who trusted her instincts, who had shown her that even the smallest actions could ripple across the galaxy. They slipped past the outer patrols and descended toward a hidden docking bay that few ships used. Elias had memorized this route from old charts and whispered reports. The bay opened into an abandoned industrial complex, one that had been converted into a safe staging area for dissidents. The walls were worn, metal and stone scarred by age, but the place offered cover. Humans, aliens, and even hybrid species moved quietly, preparing supplies, checking communications, and watching screens filled with data about Imperial movements. Lyra felt a rush of realization. Here, power was measured differently. Here, humans were respected, and intelligence, courage, and trust mattered more than lineage or rank. This was the future she had hoped to see, a place where beings could work together, even against impossible odds. The plan was simple, but daring. Elias would use their ship and the hidden network to broadcast the data stored in Lyra's armor. The evidence would expose the Council's secret control over weaker civilizations. If successful, the Empire would not only face public scrutiny but risk losing the loyalty of countless factions and allies. This was not a battle of weapons, but a battle of truth, strategy, and courage, and it relied on one undeniable factor: human unpredictability. As they prepared, Liara's confidence grew. She tested the broadcasting system, checking every channel and frequency. It would reach distant colonies, independent systems, and even some council members who were sympathetic to her cause. Elias watched her silently, impressed by her determination. She was no longer a scared princess. She was a strategist, a leader capable of inspiring action. Suddenly, alarms blared across the complex. Sensors indicated multiple royal ships entering the system. The council had learned of their location, likely through spies embedded in neutral networks. Liara's chest tightened, but Elias remained calm. He had expected this.
They anticipate us, he said. That's why we do something they don't expect.
Elias guided their ship to an open platform, positioned so cameras and transmissions would capture them clearly. Liara activated the broadcast. Data flowed across every channel. Evidence of imperial manipulation, secret operations against developing worlds, suppression of emerging species, and the Council's direct role in her exile. Every word and image carried weight, undeniable proof of corruption. Across the Empire, screens lit up. Citizens paused, factions hesitated, and whispers turned into murmurs of doubt. Liara spoke directly to the public, her voice calm but firm, carrying authority and honesty. She explained why she had challenged tradition, why exile had been forced upon her, and why truth mattered more than obedience. She did not demand submission or allegiance. She asked for understanding, questioning, and reflection. Elias watched as her words spread through the network. Humans and aliens alike began to respond, sending support, opening channels, and preparing to aid the cause. Even within the Imperial forces, hesitation grew. Soldiers trained for obedience now questioned their orders. The Council's power was fragile when exposed to transparency and courage. Outside, the Council dispatched elite ships to intercept them. But Elias used every trick he knew. He led the attackers on a chase through orbital debris and abandoned structures, confusing sensors and forcing them to divide attention. Liara's voice remained steady in the broadcasts, each sentence reinforcing the evidence and inspiring those listening. The combination of strategy, courage, and unexpected action worked in their favor. As they moved through the capital, Liara realized the Empire's citizens had begun to gather in open squares. They were not armed for battle, but they carried curiosity, awareness, and determination. Information, not violence, had drawn them out. She felt a surge of hope. Perhaps this confrontation would not end in bloodshed. Perhaps humans' greatest strength was showing what courage and morality could achieve, even against overwhelming force. Elias guided the ship to the main communication hub. The structure was heavily guarded, but he had studied the layouts and understood the timing. Moving swiftly, they disabled external shields and transmitted the final set of files, leaving no room for manipulation. Lyra's voice echoed across the Empire, the truth of her exile, the Council's corruption, and the need for reform. For a long moment, silence followed. Then, across the Empire, responses came in waves. Citizens began questioning orders, allies withdrew support from Council factions, and independent factions pledged allegiance to the cause of transparency. The Council's authority was crumbling, not through weapons, but through revelation and courage. Inside the hub, Liara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had faced the Empire, not with fear, but with strategy, conviction, and the unexpected strength she had learned from humans. Elias stood beside her, his expression calm but proud. They had done what seemed impossible. Challenged the most powerful empire through intelligence, courage, and trust. Outside, patrol ships attempted to retaliate, but their efforts were disorganized. Without loyalty and clarity from within, their attacks faltered. Citizens began helping, guiding travelers, and sharing information. Liara realized that real strength did not come from fear or domination. It came from inspiring others, from showing courage and integrity, and from using knowledge wisely. The council members, faced with the undeniable truth and the rising discontent among their people, could do little. The Empire's image of perfection cracked, revealing flaws and weaknesses. Liara spoke again, urging reflection, compassion, and fairness. She offered a chance for reform, not revenge, and for the first time, some council members listened. Elias guided the ship out of the city, now free from immediate pursuit. Liara looked back at the capital, a place that had once symbolized oppression and fear. Now it symbolized change and the potential for better leadership. Humans had helped her understand a different kind of power, resilience, ingenuity, and moral courage. As they left orbit, Liara made her choice. She would not reclaim her title in the traditional sense. Instead, she would serve as a bridge, a representative connecting humans, alien species, and her people. Her experience of exile, danger, and survival had taught her lessons that no council decree ever could. She would lead by example, not by authority alone. Elias looked at her quietly. "You've come a long way," he said. Liara smiled.
"And I've learned more than I ever could in the palace."
"Humans are remarkable." He laughed softly.
We try. Together they charted a course for a new journey, one not defined by fear or exile, but by courage, discovery, and partnership. Across the galaxy, whispers of their actions began to spread.
Humans were no longer underestimated. Lara was no longer a powerless exile. And the Empire, shaken by truth and revelation, had begun to see that power could be measured differently. The stars stretched before them, endless and full of possibilities. Liara knew that the future would not be easy, that challenges would come, but she was no longer afraid. With Elias and humanity at her side, she had discovered the greatest strength in the universe: the courage to act, the wisdom to choose right over comfort, and the ability to inspire change even in the face of overwhelming odds. As the ship moved further into uncharted space, Lyra and Elias prepared for whatever lay ahead. Their story would become legend, a tale not of conquest or dominance, but of intelligence, courage, and the undeniable power of humanity. And in that truth, the galaxy had changed forever.